Well, going into today's game, they had a plus 56 point differential in the third quarter. So we've seen the Bills be able to make these great halftime adjustments offensively and defensively, but that stays at plus 56 because it was 0-0. So the score remained 20-13 going into the fourth quarter, and that's when the Bills did get that field goal. But either way, the Bills were not able to put points on the board in the third quarter. So if we go back to the play-by-play here, the teams were just kind of exchanging possessions with one another, where the Colts punted, then the Bills punted. Then the Colts fumbled thanks to that strip sack from Greg Rousseau, DeMar Hamlin with the recovery. And then Josh immediately goes back and throws an interception on the very next play. So off of our point about how Josh, it seemed like he was throwing interceptions on those 1st and 10s where it's like you just got a nice drive going or you just had good field position and then Allen threw one of those 2 interceptions. The other point that I wanted to make was I felt like there were a lot of 1st and 10 runs once again. And that's something that I don't think that Joe Brady can keep doing because, sure, sometimes they work with James Cook, but I feel like he just gets too predictable sometimes. And a good defense like Kansas City is going to pick up on that. And you can't just keep running up the gut with Cook. You know, there isn't even a lot of like outside zones or pitches or counters. It's usually just a draw right up the middle with James Cook. Ray Davis had, 2 carries for 5 yards today. So he was really underutilized. But that was just
3 for 6, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, 3 for 6. But those are just some of the things that I didn't like. And that led to that slow start in the third quarter, where again, they were kind of just exchanging possessions with one another, whether it was a punt or a turnover. But then that turning point in the game was a turnover on downs when the score was 20-13. And newly signed, I should say, Quentin Jefferson came up with that huge sack. And that was when the Bills went down starting in the fourth quarter, got the field goal, 13 plays, 60-yard drive, took almost 7 minutes of clock. And that was really all they needed. And then one final interception from Flacco and Taylor Rapp coming up with the big pick there. And then that's when the Bills went on that 13-play, 84-yard drive, another 7-minute drive almost. And then that was when they went up 30-13. And that was about all she wrote. Again, there was that garbage time touchdown. But that fourth down stop from Quentin Jefferson, I would really pin that as a turning point in today's game. And again, just a point that I made to open up this show here this afternoon, the difference in this game in general was winning the turnover battle and scoring points off those turnovers because the Bills had 17 points off of turnovers, 20 if you count the turnover on downs. So this wasn't the best day for the Bills offense. Josh Allen was not on his A game. I saw some people were saying that maybe he took himself out of the MVP conversation based on his performance today, but good teams find ways to win, and the defense picked up the slack for the offense today.
Yeah, I love that our quarterback has over 300 yards of offense, 280 passing, 50 rushing, and a touchdown, and it's not a good day, but yeah, I'll take that anytime. Right. Obviously the 2 interceptions were bad interceptions, and you would have liked to have those back because those drives may have been the drives where he gets in the end zone throwing the ball. We'll have to see that. Overall, again, we're going to keep saying this, great team win for the Bills. They didn't have any one player having their best game necessarily, but they as a collective, they did. Who I guess would you name as the player of the game?
Off the top of my head, now, I wouldn't say that he's a player of the game, but I was going to make this point, so I guess I'll just kind of tie the two in. I was really impressed with Mac Hollins today. 4 catches on 4 targets for 86 yards, and I think that he's really comfortable in that role now because I know maybe he got bumped up on the depth chart a little bit today with those Coleman and Cooper injuries, but when they are both healthy, Mac Hollins is this team's wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, depending on what they do with Curtis Samuel. And again, I thought that was a great sign that Samuel finally appeared in the passing game today. So I guess you could make the point about both of those players, but I think that now they don't have to be relied on as those wide receivers 1 or 2, because how many weeks was Mac Hollins lining up as that wide receiver 2? Now that he can be the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, I think he is more suited for that role where the Bills can go to him in spot situations. He can be a nice blocker. He can contribute on special teams. And you have that top dog in Amari Cooper when he comes back healthy. You have a budding star in Keon Coleman. And I really liked what the two of them were able to do over the last couple of weeks prior to these injuries. But I think that maybe a game like this can help guys like Hollins and Samuel on that back end, because today they had to be relied on a little bit more, and they proved that they can get it done when their name is called upon. Now, assuming everyone's healthy, they can slide back on the depth chart and you know that back end can hold up.
Yeah, my biggest thing for when Cooper and Coleman are there is just how much that means for Shakir and Kincaid, really. If you want to throw Knox in the mix there, he hasn't really been super effective, which is another guy with a contract that, he needs to step up and produce what he's being paid. But I think that with Coleman and Cooper, that certainly gives the rest of the field to be open for Shakir and Kincaid. That's my biggest excitement factor for the Bills moving forward is if they can get healthy here. And these are some tough wrist injuries and things like that. Who knows if they're going to be re-aggravated at any point? But I think that getting Cooper and Coleman back really helps the Bills' offense look easier. I think Josh Allen might be, more settled. He might be more comfortable and be able to take what the defense gives him. He probably felt not having those guys today that he had to do a little bit more himself, and we saw that. We saw kind of those things forcing things in, or like we said, whether Shakir did or didn't run the right route on that interception is here nor there. But the Samuel interception, there was no confusion. That was just a bad throw for sure. So we're looking forward to getting those guys back, and a healthy Bills team with all these guys is going to be pretty dangerous, come January.
And one final point that I'll make is if you look at the team stats here, I mean, it is fairly even. So I'll just start right at the top here. First downs, the Bills had 21, the Colts had 19. Total yards, the Bills had 415 total yards. So a little bit more than I thought, just considering kind of the slugfest game that it was, especially with those turnovers. But they outgained the Colts 415 to 361. So the Bills had 280 of those yards in the air. The Colts had 240. The Bills outrushed the Colts 135 to 121. So again, everything was fairly even. And going back to our previous question when we opened up the show here, Lance, the Bills were 2 for 4 in the red zone. The Colts were also 2 for 4. The Bills had 8 penalties. Indianapolis had 5. But the key stat here is a turnover battle, and the Bills won that 4-2. Obviously, the Colts had 4 turnovers. The Bills had 2. I thought they could be costly, but in the end, the defense came up big and they made the plays to set the offense up in good position. And that's that complementary football that Sean McDermott is always talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to have all 3 phases, and the Bills did enough. Even though their defense didn't play well all the time, they did enough to get those turnovers and meaningful turnovers and meaningful moments of the game, even the turnover on downs. So that's the big takeaway for me. I think Teron Johnson is the MVP of the game. Huge game with interceptions, seemed to always be in the right spot at the right time.
Oh, that's right. That was what started this whole conversation. So the MVP, I guess you could say Taron Johnson. I'm going to say the backup defensive tackles. I'm going to say 3 players in one here, specifically because Jordan Phillips really didn't do that much. I mean, I know he made a key tackle, but I'm going to say Austin Johnson and Quentin Jefferson as those underrated MVPs today. Because with that interception from Austin Johnson, he now has 2 career interceptions, which ties to Sauce Gardner, which is pretty interesting. And then Quentin Jefferson, first game back in a Bills uniform, and he comes up with a huge stop, which I think was a turning point in the game. I'm going to give it to those 2 players as the shareholders of the MVP today.